Hey guys, iKailaKai here, and I know why you're here. Here's the list. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye. Recently I've started streaming, and a couple of days ago I went over my thoughts on some of the OP11 leaders as well as some of the cards, and also my predictions for what might potentially be banned this next coming month. For those who don't know, Bandai announced that they're going to make changes to the game. We don't know for sure if these are going to just be bans or if they're going to include unbans or even just exclusively unbans, but my prediction of course is that we're going to get bans. So in this video I'm going to be talking about some cards that may be in the conversation for being banned. I decided to ask my chat what cards they thought were maybe worthy of bans, and I went over each one of them in depth on why I thought maybe that is a good or not good idea. I hope that you guys enjoy this video. If you consider liking and subscribing, it really does actually help me out a lot, so I'd appreciate it if you do, and even if not, I hope they enjoy this video. Let's start then. 1 cost Gum Gum Giant. Okay, this is hard actually. Let's start with something a bit more easy. Let's leave this for a little bit later. 1 cost Ice Age, I think is exceptionally powerful, but is it actually a problem? If we look at what's actually performing well, only the leaders down here actually use Ice Age. Granted, they use 4 Ice Age, but I think that these leaders are gated enough by the leader Teach. The issue is not these decks, I should say. It's these decks up here. The question is, do they nerf Teach hard enough that they're going to need to nerf these other black decks that are gated by Teach? I feel like there's a decent chance that they nerf Teach pretty hard, but I don't know actually if they would preemptively ban other things. Maybe let's do this. Problem, but doesn't. Maybe this works. So it's a very strong card. It makes black function, but I don't think that the decks that use this are necessarily the problem within the meta, so I don't think this card needs to be banned. 5 cost Kuzan is a problem. Cannot be removed by any of the opponent's effects. Activate main, you can trash the character, you draw 1 card, and then play 1 Blackbeard Pirate type that costs 5 or less from the trash straight to the field. If you have 5 hand, you play the card, you go down to 4 hand. But because Kuzan draws you a card and then plays the card from trash, the card at 5 hand, you go down to 4, you use the effect to play Jesus Burgess or Van Augur, and then you go back to 5. And for Teach, having that extra card is just advantage because it helps you use your leader effect better. So because of that card, it makes it really easy for him to use his leader effect over and over and makes the deck a bit too strong, because it also means that you don't need to set up your Jesus Burgess in the early game and be worried that it's going to be removed somehow, because this thing just cannot be removed. It should be banned, but I don't know if they will ban it. It's just that in terms of the actual cycle of the sets, it looks really bad from a foreign perspective if you get a new set with one of the cards already banned. So although I think this card is the card that made Teach an actual problem, I don't think that they would ban it just because, 1, it's an SR, and I don't think that Bandai wants to ban SRs if possible, and 2, because it's OP10. Teach hasn't been great in the West, but this card is extremely powerful that I think that OP10 Teach is completely different. In the same vein, let's just talk about the other OP10 card, Liberation. Can KO 2 of the opponent's characters with the original cost of 6 or less and 4 or less. Effectively against Doflamingo, what it does is it can clear 2 of their characters, and although it doesn't create your own board, it just makes more time for you to eventually get to your 10 cost Teach. This card is only good against Doflamingo though, so I don't think it's a problem. I actually have seen a lot of people not running the event in general, and I imagine that if the opponent or if the meta becomes a bit slower, then people just naturally take this card out of the deck anyways, because they're only forced to put this in for the Doflamingo matchup. I actually feel like if you're building Teach in OP 10, depending on if there's a ton of Doflamingo, you have to tech for it. But if it's maybe like 10% play rate or something, then you might just be able to take this card out and make sure you for sure beat the other matchups. So I don't think this card's that much of a problem. Actually, let me just throw in the Teach leader while we're at it. He's such a problem. He doesn't really deserve to be in this tier, but I know that they won't ban him just because there's a start deck coming out for him. And then because the start deck's coming out for him, I have a feeling that they might actually do something to the 4 cost Teach, or 4 cost Burgess. Cannot be KO'd by effects, then for every 4 cards in your trash, it gets plus 1000 power. So effectively, later on, it becomes like a 4 cost 9000, can't be KO'd by effects. So it is quite disgusting. But if the deck doesn't have this, then the deck only has 10 cost Teach, which is not enough to make the deck good. I think that if Teach as a deck loses this 4 cost Burgess, the deck probably dies. However, because there's a new Teach start deck coming out in the future, there is one avenue that they can take where they ban the card and then create a more normal version of it, just being 3000 or 4000 power, so that it's not 9000 power by the 5th turn. Let's just finish off the Teach cards. The search event. I think that these two search cards, as well as Rafito from OP09, might be the problem for this deck. I think that the deck just has a ton of consistency because on release they gave it a million searchers. So I think that if it were me on the balance team and I don't want to kill Teach, then I would ban one of these three. And then the question is, which one do you ban? I think that the stage is kind of disgusting because you can search every single turn and it also makes your trash bigger. So I think that this is the #1 problem. But the one difference between the stage and the search event is that because when you play the stage, after you play the stage and you just start using the effect, so you trash 1 card and search 3, you lose a card from your hand because you have to play the stage first. Whereas for the search event, it immediately replaces itself, so your hand size doesn't go down. This is a bit of an issue in OP09, because obviously you want to keep your hand as healthy as possible, but because OP010 we have this 10 cost Kuzan, I think that the bigger problem card is this stage. OP09, I remember in Japan, not everyone was running 4 of the stage card, but as far as I've seen so far in OP10, everyone runs 4 of this. So I think that of these 3, in OP09, I believe that this event is stronger than the stage. However, in OP10, thanks to 10 cost Kuzan, I think that the stage is a bit of a problem. So let's lock in our first likely ban as the stage. And Rafito and the thing. Rafito's not a problem. This is a bit annoying, but not too much of a problem. So I'll say stage ban and these two are safe, is my guess. Hi, Shochi. I do not know if they're going to my guess is they're not going to unban anything, which is why I'm not talking about it. But I could be wrong. It'd be crazy if they unbanned Sakazuki, and I would leave the game if they unbanned Red Purple Law. Gravity Blade. I don't think there's that much to talk about this card. It's very powerful, and I also think that it could be a problem in Blue Yellow Nami, because you could just trash this to make your leader 7000 power for the entire turn. But the card, even if it's played, is only played as something like 2 or 3 copies in sorts of miscellaneous decks. The one deck that uses 4 of it is Hancock, and if you get rid of this card, you're just hurting a deck that's not actually even that good. And the card's not enough of a problem in other decks for it to make a difference. So I think that this card is not a problem. All of the potential law cards. And we'll keep as a separate conversation. Starting with the 4 cost Jinbe. Now, I'll straight up say that I don't think that Jinbe is the problem. And the reason why I don't think that he's the problem is because the real problem is the cards that you play off of Jinbe. Obviously, making your board wide from turn 2, being able to play something like Jinbe Weevil is really annoying, but it's not the thing that wins out the game. Because decks like Lucci, for example, can still deal with Jinbe into Weevil, but what they can't deal with is if you suddenly play multiple things on the board through something like 2 cost Teach. I don't think that the Jinbe would get banned, just because, one, it would also hurt Hancock, although I don't know how much they actually care about supporting other sort of B or C tier decks. But I think that the real issue with Doflamingo as a deck is the cards that you play off of it. And these are 2 contenders for some of the strongest cards that you can play off of it. So we have these 2 terrorists that have entered the chat ever since the 6 start decks that came out. Now, Hancock is completely overloaded. Blocker, look at the top 3 cards, and then add a Residong to a 7 Warlords leader or character. So basically, in Doflamingo, it's a 3 cost 6,000, which means that you could also use your leader ability on the same turn. It's just extremely high value with vanilla stat line and blocker. It's significantly overstated, which would be the reason why you would do something about it. However, similar to how if you got rid of the 4 cost Jesus Bajese from Teach, I feel like if you got rid of these the 4 cost Hancock, it might hurt the deck a bit too much. Now, it depends on how much you actually want to deal with the decks, because Bandai in the past, historically, when they could have just nerfed Sakazuki, just decided to ban the leader. But I don't actually think that 1 Hancock is a problem enough that she needs to be banned, although she is overstated. But she makes the Doflamingo deck as a whole function a lot better, because it makes your moves, for example, when you're going second, a lot better. So I don't think in regards to Hancock that she needs to be banned, but she is a bit of a problem card. So let's start talking about the 4 cost Law. Now, the 4 cost Law, the real power in this card is that you return a character to your hand. Now, this is supposed to be a hand cost, or an activation cost, but because you end up returning any one of your 1 cost random little shitlings back to your hand, you end up gaining cards to your hand while also reducing the opponent's board. So this card just keeps creating advantage, and it's the only card that Doflamingo has in his deck, aside from events like Gravity Blade, that can actually deal with the opponent's board. As such, it makes it really tricky for the opponent to run things that are 4 costs or less to be able to fight with the opponent. In which case, it means that Doflamingo is an aggro deck that kills aggro decks, because this aggro deck can get rid of the opponent's aggression while being able to increase his hand size, whereas other aggro decks just have aggressive tools. So I think that because this gives a board control aspect to a deck that otherwise shouldn't have it, this is a decent contender to be banned. But we need to talk about 2 cost Teach before I make that final judgment, because 2 cost Teach, similar to the 4 cost Law, gives the deck capabilities that it feels like it shouldn't have. So 2 cost Teach makes the deck extremely aggressive. There's a very strong set of moves that you can do if you're going second, for example, where on 4 Dong you play Jinbe into whatever. As long as it's a 6,000 power character, the next turn you can play Teach, put a character into your deck, play it out, and then hit at 7,000 3 times with your 5,000 power character, 6,000 power character, and your leader. And then after that, because suddenly your board is 3 4 costs and 1 2 cost, most likely the opponent goes for the 4 costs, which means that Teach just keeps gaining value as the game goes on. You can honestly ban either of these. I don't think you want to ban both of these. The issue with Law is that he makes the mirror extremely cringe, because you just keep bouncing each other's 4 cost Laws, and he gives board removal to a deck that feels like it shouldn't have board removal. Whereas Teach makes a kind of mid-rangey, interesting board spready deck into an extremely aggressive deck with a really high skill ceiling. I think that 4 cost Law is more of a problem card, but I think that if you ban 2 cost Teach, it makes the deck a lot more accessible, because this thing makes the skill level of the deck from like a 7 out of 10 to an 11 out of 10. You can ban both. I don't know which one I would prefer. I think that if you want to keep Doflamingo alive as a deck, I actually don't know which ones. I think that 4 cost Law is a stronger card. So I think that 2 cost Teach is a better ban if you want to keep the deck still in the meta. Yeah, I think that also because Law is an SR, they might end up banning Teach, but because they're from a start deck, it's not like the SR is very hard to come by. So I don't know if it actually makes a difference in this case, just because they're from start decks. Both of these cards are very similar in the way that they enhance the Doflamingo deck, but I would lean towards Teach getting banned, and I would probably leave the 4 cost Law. Yeah, I think that's probably fine for now. I would prefer, I think that I dislike the 4 cost Law more, but I think that the 2 cost Teach being banned would be a bit more better for the deck and the game in general. I mean, someone in chat mentioned that Law reprint is supposedly coming in PRB2. We don't have official confirmation on that, so it's hard to say how credible it is. I imagine that the source is probably a bit credible, but I believe that, I forget which other card game it was, but there are other card games that right before they ban a card, they oversaturate the market with a bunch of reprints so that people don't feel bad once it's banned. So it doesn't actually say for sure if it's going to be banned or not, because obviously once they release what cards are going to be banned, it'll still take a little while for it to actually be banned. For now, though, disregarding PRB rumors, I still think that this is probably the more likely scenario, that they ban these two cards. And then the question is, do they ban other things? Let's see, I'll probably put the Forecast Law up here, because I think it kind of deserves to be banned, but I feel like it's probably one or the other between Teach and Law. Let's talk about Forecast Pudding. The decks that run it, you know that they run it, so you play around it. Now, the argument for banning it is that having to play around it is very annoying. Pudding being banned means that you would end up changing the way that you play against these sorts of blue decks. But mainly the leader that uses this the most is basically just Blue Doflamingo, and I don't know if Blue Doflamingo is strong because of Pudding or because of Blue Doflamingo. Having Pudding being a threat means that even for who is it? Black Yellow Luffy, for example, needs to kind of counter early so you don't end up getting puddinged at 12 cards in hand, for example. So it changed the way that you have to play against the card. So if you don't play around the card, it feels absolutely broken. But if you do play around the card, it's not actually that much of a problem. It's just exceptionally annoying. Like, the issue is that even if you, for example, because we have Enel right here, if you putting Enel as Blue Doflamingo, it doesn't actually win you the game, even if you get like 5 cards at their hand. Because Enel just innately has a very solid Blue Doflamingo matchup, this card just makes it so the matchup's a bit more balanced, if that makes sense. So I don't actually think that Pudding would be banned. Especially, don't you guys have there's a winner Pudding card that exists. I don't know if you guys have it yet, but it seems like a bad idea to... Oh, did I pass it? In Japan, it looks like this. I know in overseas it looks a bit different, but the winner Pudding card exists, and I feel like if they were to ban the card after they made something like this, it would feel a bit weird. So I don't think they would actually ban it, but it's not... I personally wouldn't ban it, but I don't think it's past them to actually ban it, because it just makes the game a bit more annoying and unfun, which is probably the reason why they banned Reject in the first place. Enel. Enel, I don't think is a problem. Like, straight up, the leader ability is annoying, but there are so many leaders that just kind of body it. For example, Green-Purple Luffy, Purple Luffy, destroy Enel, and the one thing that's saving Enel is that he has a good Blue Doflamingo matchup. Also, Teach destroys Enel as well. I think Enel has so many bad matchups. You could argue that, like Blue Pudding, because he's an anti-fun leader, that they might hit him, but I just don't think that now's the right timing to, because he's not powerful in the meta. If they ban him, it's just kind of going to be... It feels like someone at Bandai just had some spite for him. This leader just isn't really a problem currently. In the future, if he gets some more support past EV02, because the 10 cost Enel, although helpful, isn't enough to really break him into the top tiers, he could be annoying to deal with, but I don't think that he's enough of a problem for them to actually want to address him right now. The thing with Kingdom Come is that there aren't very good forecasts in Enel's deck, which means that on the Tendong turn, when you are going to start playing Kingdom Come, what ends up happening is that you KO one of the opponent's characters. If you have the 2 Gashiraoshi, then you play that, and then you feel good about your turn. But if you don't have it, you kind of just have 4 extra Dong. You don't really know what to do. So what ends up happening on the turn that you play Kingdom Come as Enel is that you end up skipping your turn to clear one of the opponent's board. So you're just at a net ±0 if the opponent played a card, and then you clear the card with Kingdom Come. So although the card is annoying, I personally dislike Red Rock more, but I think that neither really deserves to be banned. I mean, Black Yellow Luffy also runs it, but the thing is that Black Yellow Luffy and Yellow Enel both still lose to Teach despite running Kingdom Come. So losing this card would just hurt those matchups even more, assuming that Teach is still a potential meta threat. And even if Teach is gone from the meta, it's not like this card alone actually changes things too much, because, I mean, from an OP11 perspective, we have blue-purple Luffy coming, which with 9-cost Sanji can play 2 things. And that sort of presence, being able to play 2 things that are 9,000 power, can't be answered by 1 Kingdom Come. So I think that against decks that actually spread the board with higher power, higher cost characters, this card doesn't actually help that much. And then if you're just playing 1 card per turn, then you end up losing to those kinds of decks anyways. I don't think this card's that much of a problem. Let's talk about Tempest Kick. So Tempest Kick is effectively only used in Lucci. There are some decks that have maybe experimented with using it before. For example, Teach has also at some point used the 1-cost Tempest Kick to be able to get into thresholds that the 2-cost Q can KO. And obviously, you can't use the effect until you have 10 cards in your trash. So only these sorts of decks that can actually increase their deck or their trash size actually can end up using it. I think that the card is powerful, but of the 1-cost cost reduction events, Ice Age is the bigger problem. So I don't think that Tempest Kick is actually a problem. 4-cost Rebecca is a strong card, but looking at this data, for example, we do have a couple of mono black decks. I don't know if the current smoker list runs it. I imagine it does, though, because you can still run Rebecca into Hina, for example. Lucci runs it. None of these top decks end up running it. So although this card is powerful, it's not as powerful as it once was before Teach existed. 4-cost Lucci is a bit of a problem. However, once again, only 1 deck uses it, and that deck is not that relevant, so I think that neither of these cards are really in contention to be hit right now, but they are potentially problem cards for the future. So I'll just put it here. 8-cost Moria, though, despite none of these top decks using it, and only these decks using it, I think that it deserves to be banned. I don't know if they would ban it, but I think that the card took a lot of the skill out of black. Because this card exists, so back in OP05 before this card existed, the blue-black Sakazuki mirror was very interesting because effectively you'd be playing for a game of inches where each turn you'd be trying to find a way to gain 1 card advantage to take away one of the opponent's card advantage. And then you slowly do this over the course of like 8 turns to eventually have it so that your hand is 5 and the opponent's hand is 2 and you have the same life, and then you're like, I've won. However, OP06 came around and Sakazuki mirrors were mainly just, even if you are in the situation where you have 5 hand and the opponent has 2 or 3 hand, if the opponent's hand contains Moria and yours doesn't, they can really easily flip the board. And as such, for the health of the game, I think they should ban this card. However, because the card is not extremely relevant in the current meta, I don't see them actually banning it. I think that because this card exists currently, it limits and molds the way that they end up designing black cards. What they end up doing is, for example, one of the most obvious things that they did was the 2-cost Scarlet. Okay, I didn't realize they had the same name. 2-cost Scarlet, you put her into your trash to play a 3-cost or less Dressrosa. So effectively, they specifically made a decent Moria target so that Rebecca could use Moria. And I think that they purposefully make cards that work well with Moria so that you're forced to use Moria in basically every single black deck. I don't think this is a very good design decision, but they've made so many cards that work with Moria that basically every deck that can use Moria is forced to. This being said, though, in OP10, we got this new 7-cost Rebecca. Now, she's not as powerful as Moria generically, because she only can play Dressrosa characters, but she plays a 7-cost and a 4-cost, whereas Moria, of course, only plays a 4-cost and a 2-cost. So I think that this Rebecca existing isn't necessarily a signal that they're going to create more cards like Moria. I think that they're creating more options for decks so that they don't need to run Moria. Because blue-black Usopp, some decks will run maybe 2 Moria, but most of them run 4 of this Rebecca. And then obviously the other top end, like the 7-cost Kirose and whatnot. But other than this card, in blue-black Usopp, you don't necessarily need the 8-cost Moria. So what they might be doing, my little tinfoil hat theory, is that they're printing similar cards to Moria, like the EB02 Sengoku, to eventually be able to ban Moria, and the black decks that have relied on Moria up until this point don't feel too bad. Now, this is my tinfoil hat theory. I think that it's possible to be banned, but I have a feeling that they probably won't, just because the timing doesn't feel correct for it. 8-cost Skid, someone mentioned. I think I'm extremely biased because this is one of my favorite cards. I don't think that it deserves to be banned. It's a problem card. It's very powerful. It makes your leader 8,000 power effectively because they're forced it into 8-cost Skid. And it's only become stronger thanks to things like the 2-cost Hoshinante back in OP05, as well as the new OP10 Tashigi. By being able to play Tashigi or the 2-cost Hoshinante, or if you're red-green smoker, for example, you can play both if you end up having enough done with your leader ability as well as 5-cost smoker, then it makes it extremely hard to be able to deal with the 8-cost Skid. However, decks that can deal with 8-cost Skid, like mono black decks because they run things like the 3-cost Brook, really don't have issue with getting over 8-cost Skid. There are different ways that you can actually deal with the card. So although the card is powerful, it's not the center of meta because the card only ever comes out when it's answering a meta. I think that the card is good. I don't think that it's the reason why we have problems in our life. Let's talk about Gum Gum Giant last, just because these kind of feel like more miscellaneous things to talk about. We've talked a bit about the Blue Doflamingo cards. I think that it's more likely if the Blue Doflamingo leader gets banned than something like Teach or Enel, but I don't actually think that they would ban the leader, but I have no actual reasoning for that. I just think that gut instinct, they've banned Sakazuki leader and the Red Purple Law leader, and if they just keep banning leaders, then that feels pretty bad for the game, so I don't think they would end up actually banning it. But it's not past them to do so. I think that if there is a leader that they would ban, it would maybe be Doflamingo, but then Wimi would be out of a job, so we cannot have that happen. However, Bandai being Bandai, it's not impossible for them to do this. Then, the new big bad is Purple Sanji and Pudding. For those who don't know this card, because it's a bit new, EB02, Purple, Black, Luffy. Pull this up as well as this up. So, the reason why Purple Black Luffy is powerful is because of Sanji and Pudding. Purple Black Luffy minuses 2 dong to make 2 dong active and make your leader 1,000 gain 1,000 power until the end of the opponent's next turn. You can end up spreading your board a lot harder because you can get active dong to be able to play something like Sanji and Pudding and Frankie on the same 5 dong turn. So the true power of this deck comes from the Sanji and Pudding sticking to the board. Once Sanji and Pudding sticks to the board, then effectively your leader really gives you back 1 active dong, as well as the 2 active dong from your leader effect, giving you 3 active dong. And then, of course, Sanji Pudding Me5 costs 7,000. That's pretty hard to remove due to the stage. Makes the deck a bit of a nightmare. I don't think that this card will be banned, is because Green Purple Luffy as a deck physically cannot function without this card. Most of the cards in this deck are just consistency cards trying to help you find more and more Sanji and Pudding, because the deck is as strong as the number of Sanji and Puddings that you get. If you end up losing this card, then Green Purple Luffy is just absolute garbage tier. And also considering that actually, stage probably should be in here. Considering the timing of the announcement of the bans, I don't think they had enough time to actually, like, this is from a couple of days ago at the point of recording this. Green Purple Luffy was very popular, but it was very sudden. A lot of people didn't expect the deck to actually end up being good. Up until this point, we really hadn't seen much Green Purple Luffy, just due to the fact that EB02 was so new. And I don't think that they would either expect Green Purple Luffy to be this strong, or they'd be able to react that fast. So I think that none of the Green Purple Luffy cards can actually end up being hit just due to the timing. I'm going to say it's not a problem, just because although it's a problem card, it's only a problem card in a very new deck, and new decks are fun to play around with. Also, it's an SR, so they probably don't want to ban it, so not a problem for now. Talking about the stage, though, I think that the stage is more of an issue, just because it makes it much harder to deal with Sunjin Pudding. If the opponent can deal with Sunjin Pudding, the deck becomes a lot worse. But if they can't deal with Sunjin Pudding, the deck becomes really strong. And what the stage does is, because it makes your cards +2 cost on the board, once you activate the main effect, you can choose one character +2 cost, it ends up making the cards much harder to clear for things like mono black decks. Again, though, I think without these two cards, the deck really struggles, so I don't think that you can justify banning either of them in a hypothetical world where we actually were planning to ban something from Green Purple Luffy. The last card that we're going to talk about, so long as I haven't really missed anything, is Gum Gum Giant. Gum Gum Giant is a problem, and that's my analysis. I'll see you guys next time. No, Gum Gum Giant is a problem, and there are so many different types of Luffy in purple. There's also obviously things like Robin that exist as well, but there are so many. Okay, English version doesn't have green purple Luffy, but we have green purple Luffy as well as in the next set blue purple Luffy, and all of these purple Luffys have access to what I think is probably the strongest card that's ever been printed. However, I think that this card is so absurdly powerful that it brings back all of these decks, like Purple Black, or Purple Black Luffy is not in the meta, but you know, Red Purple Luffy, Purple Luffy. This card alone brings them back from the grave to something that's playable. Does that mean that we should take it away, though? Because if we take it away, I think that both of these decks, including Green Purple Luffy and the soon-to-be Blue Purple Luffy, might not be playable. I think that the issue with these decks is that the cards that are not Gum Gum Giant are, by comparison, so much weaker that if you lose Gum Gum Giant, then these decks become unplayable. So I think that although, in my opinion, Gum Gum Giant is a stronger card than Moria as a whole, taking away Moria doesn't hurt black as much as taking away Gum Gum Giant would hurt purple Straw Hat decks. If it was a digital card game, they probably should have changed it to either be something a bit more uncomfortable, like Dome -3, and then like draw one card instead of draw two cards, for example. Or not both of those, but one of those. But because we live in a physical card game world, we can't do those sorts of things very easily. I think that they just need to kind of design around this card, the same way that they have been trying to design around Moria up until this point. Would kill those decks, so I don't think that they can touch this card, at least yet. Perhaps similar to Moria in a year, once the other cards become strong enough, they can end up hitting the card, but maybe we've power crept by then, so can't say for sure. So I don't think they're going to be banned. I don't think it should be banned, but it is a very big problem card, so I'll just throw it at the top of the tier list. Thank you for watching this video. I understand I wasn't that coherent, but this is what happens when I'm on stream, I guess. So if you could bear with me all the way up until this point, thank you very much. Shout out to Shochi, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.